alternative route between Europe and Asia, and yet the question lingers, is that opportunity being capitalised on fast enough, and how can we capitalise on it faster? So to answer those questions, we've got a huge panel of experts for you this afternoon. They've all got skin in the game. We're going to talk about how you bring together the public and private sectors to collaborate across borders to capitalise on this opportunity. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Tamar Yossiliani, chairperson at the Supervisory Board of Anaklia Deep Sea Port here in Georgia. Adrian Fogish, the Secretary of State for Romania's Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. Svetlana Borislavova, Chairwoman of the Supervisory Board of the Bulgarian American Credit Bank, as well as CEO and Chairwoman of the Board of Directors of the Clever Synergies Investment Fund. Neville Bissett, Group CEO of Q Terminals Group, the Qatar-based port operator. Tali Ziadayev, who is Director General of the Port of Baku in Azerbaijan. Nurjan Marabayev, General Director of Simurg Invest, which works to centralize financial flows into infrastructure projects in Kazakhstan. And Gaidar Abdi Kerimov, who is Secretary General of the International Association of the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route. I'm going to be joined by Hester Kutanj of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, but unfortunately she sends her apologies. There were unforeseen circumstances and she couldn't make it. But she has asked me to highlight in her absence that strengthening Georgia's maritime transport chains is a key priority for the EBRD, and she says that's proved by its support to Georgia's Maritime Transport Agency, with funding from both the UK and the EU to develop a port community system for Georgia, which officially launched here in Georgia yesterday. The aim is to kill 3 bird emissions. So that's some of the work that's being done already to harness increasing demand for trade along the Middle Corridor. But now I want to turn to each of our panellists to hear about how each of you have been working on this goal. I'll hand over to you to tell us very briefly about your work in the maritime industry, and we'll start with Tamar.
Thank you, Lizzie. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I stand here with profound sense of honor and privilege as we gather here to engage in very important topic to discuss on future of maritime industry. And first of all, I want to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the organizers, Ministry of Economy and the Tbilisi Silk Road Forum team for organizing such an important event. And actually, I wish them every success in their noble mission of representing our country with distinction. In our quest to explore the future trends, emerging markets for dynamic and resilient shipping industry, I firmly believe that cooperation and exchange of experience and ideas actually is the key to progress. And here, this platform actually offers the unique opportunity to share the experiences, insights, innovative ideas, setting the stage for collaborative growth and success. As a host country, actually, I'm wholeheartedly committed to facilitate this conference that will be both memorable for us, and I hope that each of us will leave this conference with inspiration and the knowledge to tackle existing challenges in the maritime industry. Turning to the topic of discussion, I wish to highlight 3 pivotal obstacles which are nowadays confronting the maritime and the shipping industry. And from my personal point of view, those are security, sustainability, and infrastructural limitations. And these are not actually limited to the region, but demand a global attention to the collective efforts to surmount. So here comes the question, how can we navigate on our way through these hurdles? And let me give you some key strategies. Actually, the reinforcement of cooperation between the stakeholders, first of all. Secondly, harmonization of the legal framework, and you will all agree that a well-structured legal framework will enhance predictability and efficiency of all stakeholders involved. Increasing infrastructural capabilities and investing actually in infrastructure is of paramount importance of growing demand of the global trade. Also, I want to highlight that we need to support the maritime actors in their digitalization transformation, and the COVID-19 actually has proved that the digitalization is very important part here, and attracting investment fundings through the IFIs, which is also of vital importance. Now, turning to Georgia, our strategic response to the geopolitical and security challenges is ever more clear, and expanding the capacity of Georgian ports is of utmost importance right now to fully unlock the country's transit and transport potential. So against the backdrop of regional circumstances in the Middle Corridor, and actually Middle Corridor in Georgia represents the secure and reliable alternative for trade and economic relations between Central Asia and Europe. And in Middle Corridor and subsequently in Georgia, we have witnessed actually the significant increase in the cargo flow over the past years, so leading to the port congestions. And here we know that we are lacking of the depth required to accommodate larger vessels in order to receive the larger vessels. So Panamax, VLC type of vessels that pass through the Bosphorus. And to address those limitations, the construction of Anaklia port has become imperative and the top priority for the government of Georgia. Actually, this will position Georgia as a crucial transit hub. So Lizzie, this was what I wanted to mention during my opening remarks, and I look forward to our discussions with these very emerging and esteemed panelists. So over to you.
Tamar, thank you. Secretary of State Fergus, over to you. Fergus.
Yes, hopefully that the technical, okay. I would like to thank the organizers for the possibility to participate to this forum, which validates the fact that we have the possibility to share knowledge, also best practices examples from our neighbors. I would like to present also the position of the Romanian government, which sees in Georgia as a strategic partner, and to which would like to settle different agreements regarding the preparation for putting the Middle Corridor as a working solution, not only within the Traceca, as we see it as an integrative framework, but also along with other types of bilateral or international agreements. And in this regard, I would like to point out the official proposal from the Romanian side that likes to join also Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan in signing the intergovernmental agreement for the Black Sea and Caspian Sea. So I started by pointing out the fact that we also have to prepare for the next legal step, for the next stage actually, which is a legal framework that offers the possibility for the public institutions also to set the framework in which the private capital, the private companies can join us together in this challenge of investments for infrastructures, but not only infrastructure. We are discussing here also about soft interventions, and digitalization, in our opinion, comes together with the green transition. Of course, that during the discussion, probably there will be specific questions regarding the main challenges, and the geostrategic context actually is not helping us in this regard. But I think that one of the heavy duty that we assumed as a member state within the European Union and also at the level of the IMO is the fact that we would like to use more environmental friendly fuels for the maritime. And the transition in this regard is going to be a very hard challenge. And hopefully we will have the possibility to discuss the partnership between the public sector and the private one, because I think the challenge is actually at this point overcoming the existing financial resources at either at national level or the European level. And anyway, it should be only a catalyst for what we are expecting to gain from this green transition as well. Of course, that I am representing Romania, and we consider the Port of Constanța as one of the main hubs on the Black Sea. And I'm taking the opportunity to present you also the possibility to further discuss specific questions regarding the possible investments that we are having in the Port of Constanța, because we consider it not only a hub at the Black Sea, but also the interconnector for the middle corridor. And from our perspective, the already initiated investments regarding the local infrastructure, regarding the legal framework that started to adjust in order to improve and assure a little bit more fluency regarding the legal procedure for custom services and also for entering as business joint ventures within the national context. We see the Port of Constanța as a strategic partner for the middle corridor. Those are the main key areas that I wanted to point out in my initial intervention, and hopefully later on we can further develop any other subjects related to the situation in the Black Sea, but as I mentioned, also the green and digital transition. Thank you.
Thanks, Secretary of State. Svetlina.
Well, I've been presented here as the majority shareholder of Bulgarian American Credit Bank, which is the Green Bank of Bulgaria. But in fact, I would like to say a few words about my presence here in another capacity. And it is as the owner of the ferry line between Bulgaria, Burgas, and Georgia, Batumi. Also owner of the vessel and the whole organization related to this. So probably during our conversation, it will be more important to stress more on the issues related to this part of our business. Yes, I would say the green idea is a major priority of us as a bank and as part of the European Union projects. And we are very, very active in this, but at the same time, being owner of a vessel that is operating between a European country and a future European country, EU country, like Georgia, I would say that there are some new challenges that arise, and I would like to share this with you and probably raise the question how we could approach these new arising problems with new taxes and limitations that are being already decided to be imposed by the EU to ship owners. So maybe later on I would be ready to talk about other specific topics related to this.
Great, I'm sure we'll come back to that. Neville.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. You're probably thinking, why am I actually sat on this stage? I work in Qatar, and we're not actually part of the Middle Corridor. But it's actually good there's somebody here who could perhaps give a third-party or independent perspective as to the Middle Corridor. Typically, the vast majority of goods that are traded around the world are delivered by vessel, via the shipping lanes that currently exist. But shipping lanes and corridors can exist, or land corridors can exist in harmony. The effect is that what we want to try and do is to find out what mechanism exists to get a product from its production to its consumption in the fastest and most efficient way possible. We've been talking earlier about the green credentials and how do we go green. The shipping industry has been subject to scrutiny for a number of years. First of all, we had to get away from heavy oil, then we had to use light oil, then we had to use low sulfur, and eventually we're going to be asked, or the shipping company is going to be asked to have vessels that produce no pollution whatsoever. The first step will be low CO2 emissions, and then from then on, from 2035, it'll be no emissions whatsoever. So effectively what we have is, with the middle corridor, it's quicker to get product from Western China to the European Union via a land corridor than it is to ship the goods from Western China to the ports in Eastern China, put them on a vessel, and then bring them all the way around into Europe generally via the Suez Canal. So effectively for the middle corridor itself, and let's be honest, corridors or trade corridors have existed for millennia. The fact of the matter is this is called the Silk Road Forum. One of the best known of all the corridors is the Silk Road. But for example, in Africa, there are corridors that exist from the east coast to the center, from the west coast to the center. Many countries in Africa are landlocked, and they rely on these land corridors to get product from the coasts, where it's delivered by vessel, into the central areas where it's consumed. The middle corridor is one of those corridors that will exist to facilitate the trade via the countries which are part of the middle corridor consortium, if you will. Now, it's not going to be easy. If you have a vessel that travels, for example, from Shanghai to Felixstowe, it travels in international waters, and as long as there are no issues with regards to calling at ports in between, you don't generally have to have multiple agreements between governments, between private parties, between public parties, as you do with a corridor. So the trick here for the middle corridor is to get everybody aligned, and I think, talking to my colleague here, who's actually part of the middle corridor, there are, I don't know, 25 nations, 8 different railway companies, 2 seas to cross, I don't know how many border crossings. So effectively, the governments are going to have to get together, and they're going to have to put in place protocols that allow the free movement of these goods. Because every time it stops at the border, it costs money, and it basically delays the product getting from place of production to place of consumption. So it'll be interesting to see how the middle corridor and the parties that are involved in developing and growing the middle corridor work together to get this to happen. And then, of course, there is the green element to it. It's not just about environmental, it's also about social. With these corridors, do they create value for the communities through which these corridors travel? In the old days, again, I'll give the Silk Road as an example, you had the caravanserai. The caravanserai were basically coaching inns where trade happened, you could rest, you could eat, and the one thing that they were always there for was actually in a secure location.
Where is the water?
And that is the other thing that I think all the panelists here will agree with, is that for the middle corridor, the one thing that has to stand out is the security. It's not just about having everybody talking together and creating and facilitating the trade as it goes past, but also to make sure that that trade happens in a secure environment. And I'm sure that as the discussion goes on, we will elaborate more on these specific topics.
Indeed, we will. Tali.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Tamar, for organizing this event. Today we are discussing a very interesting topic. I think we should put this into context of something that goes beyond just about infrastructure corridor. We are talking about the future of this region as a whole. We are talking about how this region as a whole is going to be transformed thanks to international trade that we hope will pass through our countries. So when we talk about corridors, it is not just about interconnecting roads, railways, highways. This is really about how we see the future of this region as a whole. So you can imagine 2040s, 2050s, when a passenger will jump on a train in Istanbul and arrive in Tbilisi the same day, and then tour Tbilisi, and maybe in the evening continue to Baku. So this is the future that we hope with the development of technology that we are going to come up. What we talk about caravansarais when we refer to inns or motels, this is very important. If we are talking about 21st century Silk Road, we have to really understand the logic of the ancient Silk Road. Ancient Silk Road was not based on the roads. It was based on caravansarai concepts. But what Neville was referring as a caravansarais differed based on the level of the service they provided. As we are sitting in a 5-star hotel, there are also 3-star hotels and 1-star hotels. So the entire route of Silk Road was covered with 5 stars, 3 stars, and 1 stars. These were major megapolises, which were 5 stars, like Bukhara, Samarkand, Baghdad, Aleppo, Istanbul, that contributed to the local economies and the regional economies as such. And all the traders really wanted to end up in one of these 5-star megapolises. Why? Because they sold their stuff, they bought their stuff, they got engaged in the discussions. And 5 stars, other than being just a transit point, and if you didn't know, generally, the radius of trading of any merchant did not exceed 3,000 kilometers. So you didn't see Chinese in Europe, you didn't see Europeans in China. Everything was done regionally. Everything was done in these 5-star, overlapping 5 stars. 5 stars were also Silicon Valleys of the time. These were where all the innovations happened. Chairs that we use, chairs were introduced to Central Asia by Chinese. But surprisingly, when researchers were digging in Chinese graves, they found lots of chairs, home appliances, jewelries that do not look Chinese because they are all with the Central Asian ornaments. It turns out Chinese in wooden form would make chairs, export it into a 5 stars in Central Asia, and then arts craftsmen would start adding value, you know, diamond, schmeiman, and who knows at the time, Louis Vuitton brand, and send it somewhere else with higher prices. And Chinese with good taste would purchase it back. But what happens? They buy it for 50 euro, sell it for 2,000. 1,950 euros would stay locally and contribute to the local economy. This is a very important distinguishing factor on the idea of the middle corridor as such. We are, the majority of us, are landlocked countries. Some of us are also resource-rich, which we aim to diversify our economies. For us, the end goal is not to just transit Chinese, European, or whatever container. We also want to make sure that that container arrives, we take whatever is inside, add value, add to the domestic economy as well, and then sell in the immediate neighborhood. Port of Baku is located at a very strategic location. Within 1,000 kilometer radius, we reach 140 million people that live around us. And the hub that we are creating around Port of Baku is certainly going to be green, smart, healthy, and safe. And the end goal is certainly to create a corridor that will last all the way from China to Europe, and the entire corridor is going to be green. That's the idea, and certainly our partners in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Turkey, and further down in Europe are all contributing to this grand vision, and we hope to materialize it in the near future. Thank you.
Well, speaking of Kazakhstan, let's turn to Nurjan next.
Thank you, Lizzie. Hello, everyone. So my name is Nurjan, and I'm representing Simurg Invest, which is a private development company which is developing terminals on the territory of Port of Kuryk. So what is Port of Kuryk? Port of Kuryk is a new port on the territory of Kazakhstan on the Caspian Sea, which has just recently been commissioned 5 years ago and is working on this route. So we can say that we are the biggest believers in the middle corridor because just recently we have finished 2 terminals, general cargo terminal and the grain terminal on the territory of the port, and started transshipment actually this month. So what is middle corridor? While traffic along the Trans-Caspian route is increasing, and it's actually increased 3 times from 2017 when the whole initiative started, still the potential is not yet probably met in the full, and the current geopolitical situation is helping us a lot. So our company and also our national company actually sees it as a great opportunity to take this moment and to actually realize the investment projects within the next 3 to 5 years maximum, to make sure that the capacity is there, to make sure that we can use this demand, which we have seen last year, and also we foresee to see in the next couple of years, to repay the investment, to make sure that the client is interested in using that route, and actually to be ready for the times when this route is not going to be demanded so much due to geopolitical situation. So we see this as a historical moment, and we prove with our own actions that this is important. And I think that it's a great initiative, such as this forums, to make sure that all companies and all countries are working side by side on this route to make sure that there is no any interruptions. So what is needed for absence of interruptions? You need to have a good land infrastructure, you need to have good ports, and you need to have the shipping lines. So together with Port of Baku, we are working side by side and synchronizing our expansion programs. So actually our program for the new terminals construction is perfectly coinciding with the expansion of Port of Baku. And at the same time, our strategical partner, Abu Dhabi Ports, is actually together with our national company, Kazmunegas, bringing the vessels into the Caspian Sea. So I think it's important to know for the audience that the shipping in Caspian Sea is sufficient to meet existing demand and actually around 30 to 40% growth. And we're working together with our partners to bring more vessels. So up to date for the 8 months of this year, I think the container flow is approximately like 30 to 40,000 TEUs accumulated. And with the export goods as well, we will meet approximately 70,000 TEUs this year. So the facilities that are available for in the shipping line is around 100 to 150,000 TEUs per year. So the main goal is to make sure that the port's infrastructure is ready for the transshipment of such cargo which is coming forward. So we fully support the initiative that is happening nowadays in this forum. The 3 national companies of Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and Georgia has signed a joint venture agreement for a single freight forwarder, and we see that as a good reliability factor that will bring more confidence to our clients to use this route, because single point responsibility with exact schedules and exact pricing will eliminate any doubts for use of that route. So just from the good news, just yesterday we have signed an agreement for transshipment of green ammonia from Kazakhstan towards Georgia. So we are looking forward to meet this very important European decarbonization initiative, and we'll hope that the green energy from Central Asia will come to Europe through this route in the next 5 to 6 years, and will help all these nations to develop their economies in a clean, green, and decarbonized way. So thank you very much.
News on the panel already, and I hadn't even asked a question. Thank you. I invite everyone to put your headphones on for our next set of open remarks. Gaida, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. Thank you very much, organizer. Hello, everybody. Hello, Excellency participants.
Sorry, I thought it was going to be not in English, so no headphones.
Please take your headphone, because for the exact transmission my speech, I will go to Russian.
Okay, I was right the first time.
Thank you. Ну что?
So far, middle corridor, Trans-Caspian International Route, Trans-Caspian International Route. It is one and the same thing, middle corridor, and today we are not standing on one place. You understand that 11 countries, 25 logistic, maritime, railway, terminal, port companies, today together with us on the same stage. Here are founders, stakeholders, stakeholders of our corridor. This is Dr. Taleh, and also today with us is active participant of our corridor, Mr. Simur Murjan Narabaev, and today really, as it was mentioned, spotlight. We are spotlight and we are headlines in all directions of transport logistics of the middle corridor within the Euro-Asian continent. Everybody is discussing this topic. So I would like to share with you the changes which are taking place within our corridor. Corridor is a live organism. It is not staying on one place. So when we start 10 years ago, our corridor as an idea, we exist for 10 years now. And for these 10 years, from 3 railway companies, from 3 countries, 3 ports, we transformed into the 11 countries, 25 companies, and you understand that a lot logistic companies which are included into our composition. The corridor is placed alongside the 11,000 kilometers, started from Yellow Sea on the eastern coast of China, the research port, Leningan, and it is included in first 15 ports in terms of processing containers. Why I'm telling 15? It's the worst indicator, because in reality it is between the 10th or 15th of the best ports. After, it passes through whole China, and from China-Kazakhstan border, Horgoz, we start the most active our action, the work of our corridors through all Kazakhstan. We come to Caspian Sea. In Caspian Sea, we have already 4 ports. Akhtar Kurik, which is divided on maritime international trade port, and the western terminal. Also Port Kurik, which is Port Kurik at one side, and also multifunctional terminal Sarja. And further on, we enter Azerbaijan, where we have 2 ports, Baku International Trade Port, or Port of Baku, as we usually call him, and Port Govsan, which is also located in Baku. So further on, we go through whole Azerbaijan and enter territory of Georgia, where we are now here. And from here, our corridor is divided in 3 directions. Unfortunately, I'm not able today to show you my presentation because visually it will be easier for you to see and it will be more informative. But okay, we are divided in 3 branches. The first one is Port Batumi, which is participant of our corridor. This is the Akhalkalaki Kars between Turkey and Georgia, and this is the land point. And also on Black Sea, Port Poti, which is presented also. We have a terminal. They are here now also presented. And also throughout whole Turkey and Black Sea, we come to the borders of European Union. This is Port Constanța, where we are operators of Grand Bed Group. Romania is here. Representative is here now. Respected gentleman, he told us that that Romanian infrastructure wants to participate actively also, and we are open for communication. Besides, we have such countries like Ukraine, Port South, Port Odessa, Port Chernomorsk today, and after we enter Poland, and we have South branch in Bulgaria, Port Burgas. So these 4 points, the 4th one is a tunnel. This is unique project. Tunnel the Bosphore. It is called Marmarai, and for today it is open for the cargo shipment, and we are transporting through Marmarai, and we are getting to the border of Turkey and after Bulgaria, and we reach all European countries. We can reach all European countries, terminals, ports, and everything that is interesting for our shippers. We can provide the given services, and we are ready to observe and negotiate all your questions that you are interested in. Besides, the corridor, as you know, step by steps, I'm kind of short in time, yes? In following frame of my time, I will be more detailed, yes? But again, corridor is live, corridor is developing and has a progress.
Well, there is a lot to unpack there over the course of the session. But first, I want to take the temperature in the room. We're going to do a poll. You can send your answers to this poll by scanning the QR code that we're about to put on the screen here. And you can change your mind throughout the session. So let's see whether our panelists do say anything that changes your view. Here's the question. What's the main obstacle the shipping and maritime industries face? Is it digitalization, over-regulation, rising costs, or security? So pick the answer that's closest to your view, and we'll see if we can change your minds. Let's turn back to the middle corridor, though. And Tali, I want to start with you. Because, as we've heard, the geopolitics around Russia have created this opportunity for the middle corridor to compete with, if not replace, the northern corridor. But is there a danger that that window of opportunity is going to be missed?
First of all, of course, 10 years ago when middle corridor was set up, there was no idea or even foresight that any geopolitical or there will be any wars between Russia and Ukraine. So the corridor was set up regardless or despite any potential changes in the northern corridor. Middle corridor never appeared as a main alternative to a northern or southern or whatever alternative. It was just a corridor, an alternative route that connects Europe and Asia. I think it's very important to keep this in mind. So whatever development that is taking place today in this corridor should be viewed regardless of any potential changes that could happen. Yes, there is a window of opportunity for the middle corridor, in a way, that today the interest in the middle corridor has increased because of certain geopolitical issues. But of course, end goal should not be, let's build this, and then if North opens up, what then type of idea? Because we have to make this corridor sustainable, cost-effective, fast, and then whatever corridors opens, you compete. More importantly, you have to attract big international logistic firms to this corridor. This is very important. I applaud the creation of single freight forwarder between the railways, that's fine. But you have to look at the European model of logistic development. It's very important to invite also private sector, make sure that terminals, rail operators, logistics sector providers come in and help to sustain this growth.
And Secretary of State Fogish, the Danube River has been a major export outlet for Ukrainian grain these past few months as a result of the geopolitics. But a lot of the logistical hurdles remain. Have we reached maximum capacity?
Well, up to this point, we did not reach the maximum capacity, and I think is due to the fact that the already existing infrastructure was able to deal with what's happening now in the regional context. But in order to have a general overview of the situation, and for example, in our case, with all the cereals and grains coming from Ukraine to Romania and using the port of Constanța and Danube, for example, I think that in terms of statistics or percentages, I would say that in modes of transport, it's 60% that it's going by water, 30% going using actually the road itself, and only 20% railways. Although our national interest and strategic positioning was that we should use more and more the railway itself because it's able to deal with high volumes of freight. It was not the case, and you know, specific situations when you have to improvise at some point, I would say, made us think that, okay, let's use and let's split what's happening over here in terms of priorities and emergencies. And from this point of view, we had to use the Danube. And out of the, I would say, the 30 million tons that annually crossing Romania, I think almost 10 it's using the Danube. But it's using the Danube in a way that they are crossing the Sulina Channel and then going outside our regional interest. So from this point of view, what we had to do is to assure that they are navigating and at some point even create some regional tensions, because Romania and Ukraine will also, they proposed to use the Stroi Channel, which from our point of view was a little bit different in the way that we tackled the situation. But still, we understood the gravity of the situation and we had a constructive approach. And from this point of view, out of the 30 million tons annually that's crossing Romania, still 20 million are using the port of Constanța. So the great tension, the great challenge, and also the most resources that we are using is for the port of Constanța in order to be able to deal with this high volume of cereals. And all together with our national economy, with our national cereals and other type of products that are crossing in and out Romania. So yes, that was a challenge. It was clear for us, the way that we are discussing about the middle corridor that is already existing, that we also had critical infrastructure available, but it was not modernized. And although we are asking for multimodal approach, still at some point it can create a fragmentation if it's not in the condition that it can be used in order to deal with a high volume of freight. So in our case, we had to reorganize a little bit. A good example in order to do that in a short period of time, but still, I think that we did not overload or we are not at the maximum capacity. Unfortunately, I think that the situation is not going to solve, because we heard today that peace is necessary for future development. And from our point of view, the idea of discussing about transport corridors is the idea that we have to have respect and collaboration. And those are the key factors, the foundation for future transport corridor development. And from this point of view, this is why I'm coming back with the idea of creating an institutional framework, which regardless of other external variables will assure a stability for the economic growth. And if we are discussing about the middle corridor and the way that the middle corridor is able also to take part of the pressure of the necessity of transportation from the northern corridor to the middle corridor, again, we have pros and cons. Fragmentation, multimodal infrastructure existing still is creating some delays. There was a big question if we do have the capacity of vessels in the Caspian Sea in order to deal with what's happening right now. And also the fragmentation in terms of, should I say, the fluency of the traffic for passengers and also for the freight, because we Europeans were used to the type of approach from the northern corridor, a single tariff and a single operator. So part of this easiness to deal and make business should somehow multiply and adapt to the middle corridor as well. And the initiative that part of the countries already started to do that by their own act and understanding, it clearly shows the fact that we are starting not only to be mature, but to put together the resources in order to create the new Silk Road as we are discussing about. Thank you.
Well, on this point about cooperation, collaboration, Gaidar, where are the main bottlenecks on your route? Where's the main trade friction?
Главные торговые направления.
You talk about main train directions.
Правильно, да, перевели?
Yes, is it correct? The main trade.
Узкие горлышки.
Я
My
вас...
personal
Окей,
translator.
I'm understand. Я вас сейчас, наверное, удивлю, но на сегодняшний день...
You will be surprised that for today we don't this narrow necks because we have 70% of reserve of its processing capacity, because our processing capacity is calculated foreseeing all weather conditions and all resources that we have on Caspian Sea. This is 6 million tons of cargo and 80,000 containers TU. For today, on the corridor, we don't have this narrow necks or deficiencies, but if there will be stress shocks, as we experienced it last summer, May, June, July, September, these were months when we understand, all our diagnoses, all our pains and diseases which we have within the corridor. So we learned about it, and as a consequence, we created a virtual dispatch center which every week is observing the flow of engines, the flow of containers, and regulates all problematic moments which can happen. Really, but the question is in another thing. We have lost image last year. Why? Because mentally we were not able to be ready for such big and large scale flows, simultaneously. And for today, many of cargo forwarders, they have phantomic pains, because when they recall the situation which happened last year, but this year, they think that it will be the same. But no, we do have reserves, and actually we can feel them, and only after talk about bottlenecks. Because so if there will be more increase, these bottlenecks will come back. Yes, and these bottlenecks, we know about them. We have written it, we documented about them on November 25 of 2022 in town Achtal. 4 countries participated, 8 ministers, 4 ministers of foreign affairs and 4 ministers of transport. Always signed the roadmap, which considers during 5 years simultaneous elimination of these bottlenecks within the corridor, and at the same time to invest public and private investments. Of course, they are all welcomed, and also the volume. When we talk when we talk about capacity and volume, without the relevant transport and logistic infrastructure, we have counted for 6 billion euro investments. This is what we need. We are looking for this investment, and we are undergoing consultations with our participants from where we can get this money, and how we can targetedly spend them. So this is a result of the given work, because large institutions of development like World Bank, EBRD, Asian Bank, Development Bank, Investment Bank, and etc. All these institutions are looking at us. They want to invest. They want us to go forward. We don't have bottlenecks now, but in case of 5 million and more, they will appear again.
Okay, so work has been done on the bottlenecks. Progress has been made. Something that's more difficult to reverse is the Caspian sea level dropping. Nurjan, what's going to happen to trade if that happens, and what can be done about it?
Yes, actually, this is an important issue, and it's actually a historical issue. Caspian sea level was dropping and rising over the time for the past, 200 years, that was which was recorded. And similar level were reached in the 1970s, and then At some point, some measures were taken. It was the two measures. Russia started to bring more water through Volga, and also in Turkmenistan, a very big lake, which is now supplied by Caspian Sea, and at that time as well, was closed, and therefore evaporation rate has dramatically decreased, and Caspian Sea level over the next 15 years actually increased by 2 meters. And then at some point, this dam was again destroyed, and then from that time, the Caspian Sea level was dropping. So therefore, it's not, let's say, irreversible situation. So Caspian Sea level can drop and rise. However, the dynamics now is going into the dropping downward trend. And yes, it has some implications on navigation in Caspian Sea. However, the states and the territories which are mostly affected are northern territories. So basically, this is, let's say, above Azerbaijan and above Aktau, which is a city in Kazakhstan. So mostly affected are Astrakhan ports, Makhachkala ports in Russia. In our case, in Kazakhstan, Port Kuryk is the deepest port, and we are planning a dredging operation next year. So therefore, we will maintain the good depths around 7.5 meters. And we also know that Port of Baku is also planning a dredging operation next year, and same is foreseen in southern ports. So actually, the deepest place in the Caspian Sea is like more than 500 meters. So therefore, the Middle Caspian and South Caspian is safe from the sea level dropping perspective, and navigation in, let's say, Middle Caspian is going to be there for another, let's say, at least 50 years for sure.
Okay.
So therefore, yes, it's important thing to monitor. However, towards the middle corridor, we don't see major implications since we are situated in the Middle Caspian.
Okay. And Adrian, Secretary of State, you're the other side of the Black Sea from here. There have been security concerns raised already on the panel. How do the escalations there affect you, and what are you doing to ensure that shipping's safe, especially when it comes to floating mines?
Well, that's a tough question. And, actually, before I answer to my question, it was very interesting to learn about the level of the Caspian Sea and what's happening over there, because it was a huge historical debate about the Caspian Sea as a sea or as a lake. And it had direct implication regarding the borderline or maritime level and everything related. And it put a huge question mark in relation with the future of the Middle Corridor. So for sure, the data that you prepared today and you share with us, it's going to stable a little bit the subject. Now, coming back with what's happening in the context of the war, actually, because this is what we're discussing about. Of course, that there are things happening, and if we are discussing about specifics, we have to organize everything related to the transport in a way that, for example, from the exit from the Danube to Sulina Channel and what's happening over there, naval mines. So we have minesweepers, which is present over there. Together it's a civil and military operation, which are trying, actually, just trying, because unfortunately there was an existing situation where unfortunately there was an accident, and hopefully will not happen in the future. And this is why this type of subjects are a little bit now rising at the agenda, not only for Romania or Ukraine, but also for the NATO discussions as well. Because in the case of the vessel that was affected, actually it was a Turkish vessel. So this is something that can affect also other types of transportation modes, and also vessels which are not dealing with grain or other types of products which are coming from Ukraine, just because they are using that region of the Black Sea. And also, they can divert to other regional countries as well. And this is an implication for civilians as well. Unfortunately, this is not something that we can solve in a short time period. We already started operation in this regard in the process of trying to prepare for a barricade if it's the case, because of course that the Russian intervention on the Ukrainian ports probably will lead to that. And from our side, we are prepared, but hopefully it will not be necessary to use the following steps as well. We do trust that at some point it will stabilize, at least in that region.
Okay. Turning to some of the perhaps less tangible security concerns around all of this, Neville, thinking about AI, how does artificial intelligence affect maritime trade? How should it be regulated? And what about potential job losses in the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that technology frightens a lot of people. You know, when the internet first came out, people were worried about how it would be abused or used and what benefits it could bring and otherwise. I think that going forward, typically in the maritime industry and in the ports industry, years and years ago, I shan't say how long ago because it'll give away my age, we used to walk around with clipboards and write with pens. That's changed slightly now, and you know, we all have our mobile phones and iPads if you buy Apple or whatever. But of course now everything is digitalized. So effectively, even shipping lines, ports, I'm sure corridors, all have proprietary software that helps the transit of the goods from A to B. What will artificial intelligence do as a disruptor? Because effectively that's what it is. Everybody's worried that artificial intelligence will start teaching itself. I'm not an expert, I'm not an engineer, and I'm certainly not a software specialist, but I think that's a little bit far-fetched. You can go off and watch the sci-fi films if you wish, but I think artificial intelligence is actually a force for good if it is properly used. Of course, the internet is regulated in many countries. Of course, access to, you know, websites is regulated in many countries. So why shouldn't there be regulation of artificial intelligence? Now, the way in which artificial intelligence can actually assist, let's face it, the logistics or supply chain, call it what you will, which is, let's be honest, is actually quite resilient. My colleague here was talking about the northern corridor, the middle corridor, and the southern corridor. They're all complementary, and effectively the corridors are actually redundancy written, because if the northern corridor shuts, as it has, then the trade that would normally go through the northern corridor goes through the middle corridor and the southern corridor. Now, during the pandemic, yes, we did see some early disruption, some very significant disruption in trade lanes and trade patterns and trading in general. But eventually, the supply chain actually found its way. Nobody starved. Things got from A to B, perhaps slightly more slowly. But the interesting thing was that when COVID ended, like, unfortunately, when there is a rail strike or something like that, the carriages, in this case the boxes, were all in the wrong place, and they had to be shifted. And the shipping lines do not like to shift empty boxes. So artificial intelligence actually already plays a role in shipping and in ports and terminals. We're actually looking at, we've had discussions with one of the main protagonists of AI, and we're looking at how effectively, from our terminal operating system, which is called a TOS, we can actually feed through with artificial intelligence and capture the data. And if I'm to be really honest, data is gold. Because with data, you can do a whole host of things. You can make your supply chain, or you can make your operations far more resilient. You can make them far more effective. And more importantly, in the business that we're in, safer. Everybody has a right to come in the morning and go home at night safe and sound. Safety is the first law, and artificial intelligence can actually do your deployment of staff, can do your operations, your maintenance, all of this without intervention of a human being. Which brings me on to the second point. How will this affect jobs? Unfortunately, it will. But again, there is a resiliency in the supply chain and the logistics. Automation, which is effectively the autonomous use of loading or unloading equipment such as forklifts, key cranes and things like that, also means that somebody somewhere has to do the programming. But what happens to the operator? The operator then will actually be back on the ground looking at how the product is actually unpacked. So whereas artificial intelligence will increase the flow of trade, will make it more effective, will make it safer, will make it cheaper, will make it faster, everybody who is employed currently, for example, on my port, will actually have a role to play at the end of where the artificial intelligence and, let's face it, software actually, the applications actually are focused. So I think that what we need to do is to embrace artificial intelligence. Yes, it does need some regulation, but ultimately, let's not be frightened of it and let's use it to our benefit. Thank you.
Did you want to come in, Gaida? Did you want to come in on that?
Qu'est-ce que son intérêt que нет?
I thought you wanted to talk about artificial intelligence, but that's okay. We'll move on. I just want to remind everyone about our poll, if you've changed your mind so far. We'll pop the QR code up. But let's talk about how we actually get this investment in and have collaboration between the public and private sectors. Tamar, Anaklia Port here in Georgia, let's face it, it's been long in the making, put it that way. What's changed in the new incarnation? Is it going to be bigger? Is it going to be greener to make it more attractive to investors? What's different?
Actually, definitely it will be green. First of all, give me the opportunity to give you more insight what we are going to do and how we are going to develop the first deep sea port in Georgia. And here, first of all, we cannot differentiate the need of the port without first touching at least the situation in Georgia and how uniquely we are positioned in the corridor. We've made extreme strides in the reforms in maritime and also in opening up our economy. And probably many of you heard today and know about the ratings that Georgia has achieved during these 10 years. Actually, this gives us ability and the possibility to position ourselves as a logistic hub and to create the perfect place for to establish such a hub in the Black Sea. So obviously, the logistic and transportation has been the function of transit has always been the Georgian strive of the Georgian economy, and I think that in last decade we prioritized this sector. And as we speak, actually the international standards have been implemented in our legislation and so on and so forth. So this will give more possibility, first of all, for the economic growth, and we will take the advantage of this function of Georgia that we were always part of. In general, the uniqueness and the positioning of Georgia also has to be mentioned in the context of the free trade agreements which Georgia has with its neighbors and with the major economies of the world such as EU, UK, China. We have to say that no other country in this region has such a unique position, and this is another reason why Georgia's potential as a logistic and transit and transportation hub is ever more clear. So let me give you the key factors about the Anaklia first deep sea port, which is, as I have mentioned during my introduction, the top priority for the government of Georgia. The government's extensive project modification actually have enhanced international standards and what is very important, the bankability for the private sector, making Anaklia port an attractive opportunity for global port operators and investors. In May 2021, we have enlisted Dutch company MTBS, which updated the project's feasibility study, including the tariff and traffic and financial models, and also the new public-private partnership structure. This was accompanied by the Georgian Port Review by MTBS in February 2022, and in 2023 already the Ministry of Economy has announced the selection of the private partner for Anaklia Deep Sea Port with the PPP project. So the project and institutional PPP model involves substantial capital investment from the Georgian government, and that's why our company was established, the 100% state-owned special purpose company, where actually I'm working right now, which is actively now preparing for the project, updating necessary studies, securing the permits, and we are going to initiate the marine construction, including dredging operations and the breakwater construction. Following to the partner selection, the state-owned company and the private partner will establish the JW, the PPP company with the state holding 51% of shares. Actually, the company will receive up to 340 hectares of land from the Georgian government with the early capex of 600 million USD, and in the first phase we will handle around 600,000 TEUs. So the structure of the project actually is that we have to develop 9 phases, and now we are focusing on the phase 1, which is most important right now, with 2 terminals. One is container terminal with 2 dedicated container berths. In total, we will have 625 meters of length. In the beginning, we have, as I have mentioned, we will handle around 600,000 TEUs, and our mission is to expand up to million as we ramp up. And the second terminal is the dry bulk terminal with the length of 250 meters. Here we are envisaging to actually transport the fertilizers from the Central Asia. Behind the port, we will have the key terminals and the superstructure, and we will have ability to accept the largest vessels that pass through the Bosphorus, so Bosphorus, without additional assistance, and the depth will be the 16 meters, and the operational uptime will be 95% during the year. Also, the government of Georgia is going to develop the free industrial zone in Anaklia. Also in parallel, we have to mention that proper hinterland is very important part, and where Georgian government is heavily investing in. Today you have heard that East-West Highway is going to be finalized in 2024, and also modernization of the railway is finalized next year, expanding the capacity and doubling the capacity from 28 million tons to 48 million tons, where the operational costs and the time of transit will be also decreased. So just want to touch finally the statistical growth in containers. I will give you the just numbers, this will give us
very briefly.
Yeah, sure. We have the 65% of growth comparing to the last year. So I think that it will be a record-beating year in terms of the amount of TEUs that will pass through Georgia, and this is also one of the reasons why we need additional port.
Okay, you can tell we're in Georgia, there's a lot going on here, and it's all about bringing together the public and private sectors to make this trade route more resilient, but the long goal is also to make it more sustainable. And there's a conflict, isn't there, between that sustainability and then making everything competitively priced in the short term. So Svetlina, I want to turn to you. Is the green transition actually mission impossible? Is it that the incentives are there, but the off-ramp maybe isn't?
Thank you. Good question. Actually, first of all, I would like to say that I'm really happy to hear that today such an agreement has been signed for the middle corridor between the 3 most important countries. And this provides already all customers with 1 point of sale and 1 tariff. So that makes things totally different. And it will ease a lot the interconnection and the transportation and so on. I would like to stress that we started our ferry line 9 years ago. And at that time, it was really difficult to, to make it profitable, to make it successful, because such agreements didn't exist, such cooperation was not available. And now this is a dramatic shift, dramatic change, which makes me, and I'm sure all possible customers very happy. So, to answer to your question, yes, green transition is really important and it is a must. It has to happen. Also in the field of transport, and it has started already. But there are specifics in the field of sea transport. And one of the specific facts is that there are no vessels that that can run on really green fuels nowadays. So in order to start producing and offering on the market such vessels, there has to pass certain time. So therefore, we have to have in mind and to think about all these new rules, regulations that have been already imposed by EU for vessels that are visiting EU harbors. And actually, they are valid since the 1st of January 24. So what this will cause, for sure, it will cause increase of prices for the customers, because all the ship owners or operators will have to pay these additional taxes.
No one wants that?
Yeah, and if we think more deeply, then what could happen? The truck owners and transporters that are using now the vessels, the ferries, to transport the goods, I'm talking about ourselves, for example, because I know it. Actually, what is a ferry doing in the Black Sea or in another sea? It transports over 100, 110, up to 150 trucks. And this is a green transport because it doesn't allow them to make emissions, CO2 emissions, while they're on the vessel. And now, if the prices become too high because of these new taxes, then of course they might prefer to use again the road transport. So there should be a really very deep analysis before taking such decisions and imposing taxes to be paid. Also, as I said, okay, that's decided. Taxes will start to be paid. The end user will decide if he wants to use more green transport or, again, use the trucks. But in fact, we don't have alternative nowadays. So this should be done at the moment when we are ready, when the world is ready, when there are already such vessels produced, or a major change is made with the existing vessels, but there is no such technology as of today. So this is an important thing, an issue to be thought about. And another thing I wanted to stress on was the oh, it came out of my head now. But actually, the Greeks, they met like 3 weeks ago, Greek ship owners, and they made such analysis of what are the CO2 emissions from the world fleet of vessels. And it came out that the emissions of the world fleet of vessels, all vessels in the world, are the same like the emissions of the cattle in New Zealand, which is a strange fact. So we have to think about this as well. I mean, not only us.
I'd rather not. I just want to squeeze in one last question because we did have a bit of a delayed start. Neville, you're kind of the outsider on this panel. You're based in a different part of the world. What do you see as the biggest threats in the next decade to maritime trade, given that it's the geopolitics that has created this opportunity now?
Yeah, it's a good question. If I'm to be really honest, the main threat to the maritime industry really is, as our colleague was saying, the conversion to green operations. It's going to cost a lot of money. Now, I'm not here to talk on behalf of the shipping lines, but I have to give them some credit, is that they are actually now in the pipeline with their constructors discussing how they can build new vessels that are green. So they're looking at hydrogen, they're looking at batteries, believe it or not, they're looking at how other propulsion methods, which are completely green, can be used in the next generation of vessels. In terms of geopolitical difficulties, the thing about shipping is that if there is an issue with regards to conflict in certain areas, the shipping line doesn't necessarily need to call there. It can actually bypass ports of call relatively simply. But that does then ask the question is that in the zones of conflict, how does product get to the end user who may be in a conflict zone? Again, surprisingly, you may know that the resilience of the supply chain really is there. And if it has to go by truck, if it has to go by motorbike, if it has to go by any other means, it will. And I'll give you an extremely good example. I'm very lucky, I've lived in Africa most of my life. And one of the most effective ways of distributing medicine was actually talking to the general distribution companies like, I'll give you one example, the fizzy drinks industry. I won't name any particular one. And they have, in cases where they were delivering to the villages, the last mile or the last 5 miles, whatever, was done on a motorbike. And effectively what they did is they came to an arrangement with these distribution companies and these production companies, and they distributed medicine in this way, whether it was in a conflict zone, whether it was in a remote area, whether it was up a mountain or in the valleys. And it was an effective way of getting product to the consumer. So in effect, the logistics supply chain, or the supply chain of the logistics industry, actually is very resilient. For the shipping industry, the biggest challenge is going to be net zero. It's going to cost a lot of money. Yes, that cost will eventually be passed on to the consumer. But effectively, as the fleets are renewed and the larger shipping companies, the CMAs, the Maersks, the MSCs, the COSCOs, and many others that exist, are actually already in the process of changing the way in which their vessels actually steam the oceans. And one of the other things, I don't know if anybody's heard about, it's actually called slow steaming, which actually produces less polluting emissions. But obviously, as it suggests, it means that the products take longer to get from A to B. The other thing for shipping lines is that they don't make money when they're in port. That's where their costs are. They make money when they're shipping. So what they will be saying is, if we do slow steaming to try to get to these environmental reduction targets, we need to get into a port and get out really, 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 really quickly. So it will also be incumbent on the terminal operators and the port operators to get on board as well to assist to make sure that the green revolution is resilient and permanent.
Okay, so it's net zero, the biggest obstacle, not the geopolitics. Let's get to the results of our poll. The question was, what is the main obstacle the shipping and maritime industries face? Rising costs, which was pretty much, did the panel agree? I think
Yes.
so.
We can add some statistics about the costs which are implied by this green transition, because in terms of available data on the market, there is some calculations that there is a need of $70 billion every year till 2050 in order to reach the target. So for sure in 2035, I think they have to renounce to the internal combustion engine, for sure.
2035.
But there are still some solutions. The targets are too ambitious, but we can adopt and we can have a gradual implementation in order to get to that target, because for sure technology is not only developing, it's surprising us, because we can discuss about the green hydrogen, which can be used for shorter distances. We can discuss about LNG, which can be used also, and in terms of calculation over the impact of the environment, it says that 20% off if you're going to use the LNG also as an intermediate situation. So for sure, there are a couple of things that already are on the lab research, should I say, the part of the development and new ideas that can be put on the market. And we are a little bit cautious about the electricity or the batteries, because there was a couple of examples which failed at the moment. But there is a rumor that it's going to be a new battery storage capacity released on the market. So this can change the game again. So for sure, there are so many variables that can be as an input to this strategy. But it was adopted. So now we are discussing about binding obligation for all the countries.
Yep.
It's not only European Union, it's also adopted by the IMO, because we had the Secretary General over here. So for sure it's going to be challenging.
The final word to Nurjan before we all hit the bar.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the rising costs. Actually, it's an issue in the middle corridor, and I think one of the main solutions is backloading. So basically now, mostly like around 70% is going from east to west, and around like 30% is going back. So therefore, the exporters, they pay actually for shipping inside the Caspian for going back and forth to return empty. So solution for that most probably is first containerization, so that we can use general mode of transport to load back and forth, and also to attract the import to Central Asia to come like through, let's say, Suez Canal and Mediterranean back into the Central Asia with the same route. So in case if we can achieve at least 50-50 or 60-40 loading back and forwards, I'm sure that this will decrease shipping costs in Black Sea and also in the Caspian Sea. So I think this is a challenge which we should all work on, and I hope the Anakle port will help us with that as well.
Well, that's all we've got time for, but I'm sure at the next Silk Road Forum we can mark your homework on how you've all progressed on these challenges. Please, everyone, join me in thanking our panel.
That's called the Pyxis Ocean. The transit technologies.